This is Into the Mix, a Ben & Jerry's podcast about joy and justice produced with Vox Creative. I'm Ashley Seaford. Today,
this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
let us shine. Let's get into it. That beautiful voice belonged to LaTosha Brown, co-founder of Black Voters Matter Fund.
Now, that was my grandmother's favorite song. That was also Fannie Lou Hamer's favorite song. And I'm so serious about this, that every single person that's listened to this podcast, this is our moment. This is the moment that the world needs light. This is the moment for us to stand in that light and be that light, because it's in darkness where you see the light. I often talk about, this woman named Harriet Tubman that some people may have heard of. And, the story is that Harriet Tubman followed the North Star to freedom, that she fixated on this point in the sky that was something greater that she could actually get to, that she could see, but she was led by that light, that little light, and it led her to some place that she had never been before, right? And so while some people see the night as a space to be fearful of, there were some folks, including my ancestors, that saw the night as an opportunity. That was an opportunity for some of us. We were like, oh, we're going to ride out. We're going to plan and we're going to ride out, right? We're going to be this light, right? And because we can follow this star. And so in this moment of American political history, this is the moment for you to lean in, not to pull back. This is the moment that the nighttime has befallen us. And that's why we need the stars to illuminate the sky.
LaTosha and BVM are spreading that light by fighting back against the trauma of voter suppression.
Ultimately, this process of people's time being wasted, feeling like they're not treated as they should be treated, that's really traumatic, right? Something that's just to go vote should not be a traumatic experience, right? It just shouldn't. And so part of what we decided is that the best way to actually shift an environment that is intended to create fear is to saturate it with love and joy. That's how you combat fear.
I know that there's a dance party that you guys did. Can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Let's go! B-O-T-E, let's go! Come on, B-O-T-E!
Oh, absolutely. Part of what we decided is that, I'm going back with my grandmother's colloquialisms. Like, she would always say, don't let the devil steal your joy, baby, right? Mm-hmm. I remember even talking about dance, we use that even as a strategy. I remember at one site we were doing people came in to vote close to the time that the polls were closing, but poll officials inside, one of the poll officials did not want to let the people in, but we're like, no, it's not 7 o'clock yet. Mm-hmm. They should have the right to be able to vote. It's starting to get intense. But what we did is we sent some of our folks and our lawyers inside, and what we did is we blocked the door by doing the electric slide. And so we were like, well, we all going to just dance here all night. We're going to electric slide and dance it up. But these people are going to vote tonight. And so instead of allowing it to be this contentious, like we've got to yell and protest and demand, the way we're going to do is we're going to use our joy, and we're going to put so much love and energy and joy. What you going to do? Break this up? And so, yes, what we do is we have dance parties. We have parties at the polls when we need to. Like they said that we couldn't give pizza and water out in line. Fine. Guess how creative we are. Now we have food trucks that are right on the streets with music, with a DJ. So we don't have to bring you pizza or water. You can just come and get you some pizza and water or hamburgers. We'll stand in line as a proxy for you until you come back. Like, we're creative. Like, you can't out-innovate us, right? Mm-hmm. And you cannot You cannot beat love. That's part of what our message is with Black Voters Matter. Yes, we do voter work. Yes, we're doing power building work. But let's be clear that this isn't really about voting. This is about power, right? And this is about those who are in positions of power, who they think has access to power and who doesn't, or who shouldn't, right? And we're saying that just the agency, the fact that I am a human being and there are decisions being made about me, that I have a right, I have a fundamental right that I was born with, not just what the Constitution gave me, but what God has given me, that I literally have the right to be able to operate in my agency and to actually speak to anything that is going to govern me and my family or make decisions for me and my family. As we're organizing, as we're creating spaces, as we're doing our voting work, we want people to feel affirmed that you are loved and you are valuable and you have agency. And hell yeah, you need to fight back because of who you are, right? Just because of who you are. I think part of our work, it really is rooted in the joy of life, that we still believe in what Dr. King believed in, and that is creating this beloved community, that we can look in the face of those that are seeking to suppress our vote and say that we will overwhelm you because there's more of us than you. And so what we will do is get together, right, and have this beautiful rainbow coalition that Reverend Jesse Jackson talked about for years, that we will literally create the South that we desire and that we deserve.
Back in Douglas Coffee County, Miss Livvy and the volunteers that organize with Black Voters Matter Fund agree with Latasha.
You have to continuously be consistent. You just have to just persevere, above it all. You just have to continue pushing forward. You have to know what it is you want, and you stay focused on what it is you want. You keep your eye on the prize, so to speak. But I think it was well worth it because of the legacy. Because of the legacy.
Yeah.
And what my mother stood for and what I have been building on.
It'll always be here.
Yes.
A lot of young people
Yes.
are going to benefit
Yes.
from what's already been started.
That's right.
And I think that's, maybe that's what a lot more people, young people especially, have to learn to take on. It's not all going to get done, while you're here and while you're standing there.
Right.
But what you lay the foundation for could change the future forever.
That's right. That's right.
Because your mom's work changed your future.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Researchers are beginning to understand voter suppression as a public health issue. We know that other forms of discrimination contribute to physical and psychological stress. And now we're seeing that the suppression of voice and choice has effects on our health too. Just look at the toll it had on Miss Livvy. There is a cost to the people on the front lines of the fight for voting rights, like Miss Olivia Coley Pearson.
One of the things that I worry about a lot is that I get to have these conversations with so many amazing women. And I gotta say, it's mostly women. And it's mostly Black women.
Wow.
And I get to have these conversations with y'all. And y'all are doing this amazing work. You're changing your communities. You're changing minds. You're changing hearts. And it might not be happening as fast as we want it to happen. Right? But like I said, you're laying that foundation. You're laying that groundwork.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's admirable. I have so much gratitude for it. But what about you? What about what it costs?
Yeah.
What it costs you?
Yeah. And that's true. That's true. And my children, my daughters, they tell me all the time it's conflicting, but
Of course.
if this is my calling, and I truly believe it has been my calling, and I'm praying that everything I've gone through, that it's not in vain, that
It's
it will
not
pay
in
off
vain.
one day.
It's not in vain.
So if it's my calling, then it's my calling, and it's well worth it. Whatever, it's worth it. Long as it makes it better for women down the road, Black women down the road, poor people down the road. I'm just praying that it's all not in vain. That some kind of way down the line, it will really make a difference. That's what I'm praying for. And I'm just asking God to just continue to guide me and to keep me safe. And he brought me through it. He brought me through it.
I kept promise.
I kept promise. That's right.
Faith has always been a part of our movement. Faith is the evidence of things not seen, the substance of what we hope for.
That's April England Albright, the legal director and acting chief of staff at Black Voters Matter Fund.
It is scary, right? Whatever you're hoping for, keep your eyes on that. That's why faith is the substance of what is hoped for, not what is seen. We have to imagine and have faith in what it is we want, not in just what we see. And we can't change that, even in movement and organizing work. And our ancestors completely understood that. Imagine that you and I are not slaves, right? Because the slaves, the person who was enslaved, imagined that one day we would not be. And because of that hope and what they saw, what Harriet kept seeing, right, is why you and I are sitting here under the 15th Amendment.
We've come so far. But remember, whenever there's been Black progress in this nation, there's been backlash. So we need constant vigilance.
I think, frankly, we've lulled ourselves, societally speaking, to sleep thinking, okay, yeah, there's a little back and forth, but it's never going to be dire. If there was ever any doubt, the Supreme Court's decisions this term tell you, in pretty unmistakable terms, oh yeah, everything's up for bid.
That's Kareem Creighton. He's the vice president at the Brennan Center for Justice in their Washington, D.C. office.
We also know that the courts, in some of the same ways that were true prior to the Voting Rights Act, they're now staffed with more people who have a radically different read of the Civil Rights Revolution. They don't see that as a happy ending, and many of them are entertaining theories that really intend to take back some of the gains that were adopted. So that's the world we inhabit right now, and it is quite scary, but really calls for the need for us to revisit the question of congressional authority to enact voting rights legislation. And, to be more specific, we need a new Voting Rights Act that, really responds to some of what was lost and maybe some new things, too, in our system.
When we come back, we'll discuss how to move from fear to hope.
I believe we have to have better legislation in our voting rights world. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is on the agenda. And certainly members of Congress have said, look, you get us the right configuration of majorities in the House and the Senate, we'll get it passed. But you got to have senators who can support it.
The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is a bill that's meant to restore and fortify the legal protections the Voting Rights Act of 1965 provided. The bill passed the U.S. House by a straight party line vote back in 2021, but it didn't get the 60 votes necessary to pass the U.S. Senate. Only one GOP senator crossed the party line to vote in favor of this bill. The bill received 50 votes. 10 more seats on the Democrat side would secure all of our voting rights.
But that means sometimes voting in the off years, the so-called off years, and not just the presidential election, and bringing people along as well. And if you're thinking about sitting on the sidelines this election, especially this election, understand there's somebody who's going to show up to vote, and they may not agree with your point of view. And the question is, are you going to speak up on behalf of interests that are important to you, or are you going to let somebody else direct the action?
When you hear those wonderful words of, the people, with all these inalienable rights, the people were not us. And not just us. There are lots of marginalized people that were not included in that, right? I'm talking about those of us who are not landowners, quote unquote. I'm talking about people of different sexual orientations, because this country was created and founded for people who were white male, right? Straight, Protestant, right? Landowners. So that's wealth, that's faith, that's who you love, that's your gender, that's your race.
April says the work required of us in this country is to stand on those words. Those inalienable rights belong to all of us.
And so every act of doing this, where we find our ways in creating more robust protections for citizens that weren't necessarily originally contemplated, we are changing America from its original concept. But I don't believe that it'll be a burden that all of our generations will share. If we do what we're supposed to do and not break or interrupt that succession of liberation fighting, at some point, if we continue to lodge and work together, all of those people I named, our children won't have to do it.
Lauren Grow-Wargo, the CEO of Fair Fight, says all the issues we're facing today are inextricably linked to voting rights.
I didn't get into this because of voting rights. I got into this for economic justice, for, getting a living wage for all workers, those kinds of issues, and trying to fight against some of the racial inequalities in our economy and others. And I've ended up in this voting rights space because they're inextricably linked, that we can't make progress on one without the other. And especially as Georgia and the South grow in population and economic power, our need to support full civic engagement for our citizens is really grounded, I think, in the South. I think that's where we need to be.
Demographic shifts are also going to play a major role in these efforts.
Right now, the kids of this country are majority kids of color. White kids are already in the minority. I think it's right now under 30 in our country are majority people of color, with Latinos and Asian Americans growing and the African American population relative to the white population slowly growing.
Brookings Institute estimates that the U.S. will be majority people of color by 2045.
Whites will go into the racial minority. All this is happening, it's disproportionately happening in the South and Southwest. And this demographic threat, the lie of voter fraud with the threat of demographics, results in policy violence, race-neutral policies that are racially targeted.
Voting rights advocates like April and Latasha and Black Voters Matter Fund and Lauren at Fair Fight are working hard to make sure our democracy can thrive along with demographic shifts.
I think we're going to be in a very tumultuous time in terms of where people live and the political map. And so I think I view it as a lot of different opportunities for us to build a state that has many paths to 270, many paths to a U.S. Senate majority, because right now it doesn't feel like we have many paths. But I believe we can collectively bring more states online as competitive battleground states because of demography, but also, again, demography is not destiny, it's just opportunity.
We have to pull on every lever possible.
The democracy pieces, the voting pieces are so fundamental. And every time a mass challenge letter goes out in Georgia, we send those same folks a letter so that they know their rights, right? It's very satisfied to have very concrete things we can do. And if you're listening to this and want to do concrete things, you just go to fairfight.com and sign up to do concrete things like collect the story of those voters who are being challenged so we can expose them and give them to the media. And you can, be a poll worker yourself this year.
This is an ongoing fight.
This is just the fight of our country, okay? It's always been a fight against fascism. It's always been a fight for full citizenship for everybody. It's always that fight. It's just a permanent fight. It's never going to be over. We are just going to be fighting to improve it and get it better. But this is what the fight is. Now, we need to really thwart and win some of these big fights, right?
And when we win, we'll celebrate, rest up, re-strategize, and get back to it.
There's always pushback, and we always have to be prepared to guard against it and to, when necessary, push back against people who are pushing against us. Because these ideologies are always manifesting in ways. They don't go away. They don't go away, and they require us to be vigilant.
So what does this actually mean in tangible terms?
People are going to leverage and use their power against folks who have less power. And our coalition fundamentally has less power. And you can see that in all kinds of metrics in terms of who holds office, who's got the money, right? But we have the people. And so if we organize and we're organizing authentically and working in coalition authentically, we can make incredible strides.
We've got to go further, right? We've got to go further than just legislative laws that can be interpreted this way or that way by, a good judge or a bad judge or whatever. We need more enshrined protections. We need more enshrined protections in state constitutions. We need to fight for more voter protection at the state level. And we can do that because, the federal constitution is a floor. It's not the ceiling. And so where the federal constitution is quiet, the states can act. And so, for example, in places like the state of Florida, you saw those citizens do a ballot initiative that did what? That made more and stronger voting rights, right? That preclude and made unlawful even political gerrymandering. The Supreme Court has said the federal Constitution doesn't care if you want to play, power through parties. If you want more Republicans and you want to create a law that creates more Republicans, then go do it. The federal Constitution won't stop it. But state constitutions can.
And hopefully, Georgia's record-breaking voter turnout in 2020 is just the beginning of what the South will look like when more people access their voting rights.
So I think, 10 years from now, if I'm back on this podcast, it's going to be a very different landscape. And hopefully there'll have been a lot of really good work and we'll have a much expanded map.
We need you to believe. We need you to do work.
You can do the work by writing a check.
Whether it's $5, whether it's $5 million, write a check.
Go canvassing door to door.
If you can't go canvassing with an organization, if you can't do direct work with them, then get on and do some text messaging. We do text messaging campaigns every Tuesday, so you can actually come and text and have tea with us if you want to.
You've heard them. As the general elections come up on November 5th this year, yes, vote. Your vote absolutely matters. Voting is a right, yes, but we have to continue to do the work to protect our right to vote this election season. And also, get involved, volunteer, organize. Find a political home where you can do that work. And get your friends and family involved too. More hands make light work. When more people get involved, however they are able to, the work of protecting our democracy will feel less daunting and more sustainable. And when we win, we have to continue to pay attention. We have to remember that when we win, we're going to have to defend that win over and over. Nobody becomes the winner once and is the winner forever. Let your passion to create the world you want to see drive you this election season. Your freedom and values are on the ballot. And to learn more about your voting rights, go to benjerry.com/vote. Take care. Into the Mix is a Ben & Jerry's podcast produced with Vox Creative. This episode was written by Priscilla Alabi. The Vox Creative team includes lead producers Priscilla Alabi and Jules Bradley, production supervisor Taylor Henry, and production manager Jessica Bay. Martha D. Sally is our supervising producer. Anu Subramanian is our executive producer. The team also includes Amy Wenzel, Senior Manager of Creative Services, Michelle Blam, Associate Director of Project Management, Director of Post-Production, Greg Russ, and Post-Production Manager, Andrew Hammond. Kyle Neal engineered this episode. Felicia Dominguez is our junior engineer. Original music by Israel Tutson. A special thank you to Kelly Young, our sensitivity reader, and Zoe Mullick, our fact checker, and to Ariane Young for her support. The Ben & Jerry's team includes Jay Tandon, Jay Curley, Sanjana Mahesh, Chris Miller, and Palika Makam. I'm Ashley C. Ford. Thank you for listening.
Vox Creative.